It contributes.
It contributes.
But let's first get that clearly. Trees that have a bigger leaf surface, they take more carbon dioxide. Let's get that very clear. There are pine trees and there are broad leaf.
Exactly.
Let's get that very clear from you as an expert.
That's very true, because when you find that when you look at avocado,
yes,
avocado trees has a very big potential to absorb much more carbon,
because the leaf surface is wide
and even also thick somehow,
right,
than say pines or eucalyptus.
Right.
So if you planted an avocado or another fruit tree within your compound, you are really contributing a lot. Or the flower gardens,
right,
those who love flowers, and those who want really the green environment around them,
right,
you are really contributing.
Okay.
But also, when you switch off your light when you don't need it,
yes,
you are also contributing.
How are you doing? How are you contributing?
You are contributing because, one, you are saving power which is supposed to be used tomorrow. You are consuming it now, and to produce power, it costs a lot.
It affects the environment.
It affects the environment.
Let's talk about the government and then the private sector.
Yeah. The government right now, I think we need to really focus on putting in place, we are in the process of developing what we call the climate change policy. But we need to have a very good and strong policy, which is very inclusive, and which policy we must be ready to implement, because we don't want to come up with policies and we don't implement them. So we must come up with a very robust climate change policy, and we're in the process, government is in the process of doing that. And also we should make sure that as we develop the policy, we have the participation of these different stakeholders: civil society, local communities, the private sector, and all other categories and vulnerable groups, so that their voices and their issues are taken and considered in the process of developing the policy. But also, government should take the issue of the green economy very seriously.
What do you mean?
Green economy has very, very good opportunities for us. I was really sharing with some colleagues that if United States of America decided to focus on the green economy as a strategy to market its products, very many buyers, not only in Uganda but elsewhere in the world, would be very interested in buying green products. What we call green, kind of, you are saying that these products
produced in a way that they don't destroy. You don't destroy them.
Exactly.
Right.
So what we need to do, we need to find ways of how could our government put in place mechanisms to reward institutions
that do green
products, but also that come up with green kind of investments.
Planting forests.
Planting forests, but forests that should not really be at the expense of, again, the environment, because there are some forests and trees that, like, you destroy one forest, again you plant another one.
What do you mean? Explain that. You mean if we want sugar very badly? We know these days we need a lot of sugar. We don't think we should cut down a certain forest.
I think so.
You don't think we should cut that forest?
We shouldn't. We shouldn't. Because when you look at the potential of Mabila in terms of carbon sequestration,
yes,
Mabila is
carbon sequestration. That's trapping carbon.
Trapping carbon.
Yes.
Mabila is playing a very important role, and you find that we can get more money in carbon trading than the money we are getting in terms of sugar, in terms of the taxes we are getting from there. And as people said, that the biodiversity, the medicinal plants, which are
the small animals,
that's out of that biodiversity.
The local climate.
The local climate. You can never replace those things with sugarcane.
Well, it sounds very obvious to you. Some people don't think it's that obvious. Let me come to Mr. Bakika. This pressing of the Western world, can you explain to us a little bit? Some people would say the US contributes 25% of CFC, of carbon, CFCs. Africa contributes 2%, but that's in line with the GDPs. Africa contributes a tiny fraction, so it's fair.
Yeah, I always tell people, let's not point out the US, let's not point out, these are governments. If your government cannot stand on its toes to speak out what it sees is better for it, then you shouldn't blame another government. The US was clear. It said it's still moving in at a development trajectory, and said, look, I cannot go into reducing my emissions now, so I can't be party to the Kyoto Protocol. So for it was clear. Right. Now other governments like Japan, Russia, they have seen that perhaps they fall into a trap, and economies like China, who are still labeled as developing countries, actually find that their emissions are also growing up. India, it's among the leading manufacturers of pharmaceuticals. Yes. But actually for me on that subject, I always say a government should define its path. I just want to allude more on what my colleague talked about, what governments are taking on. For example, government of Uganda, we know that His Excellency the President of Uganda, he is a member of the highest committee in African Union, which is the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change. Our President, he is a member, he is among the 9 members. Now the committee is chaired by His Excellency the Prime Minister of Ethiopia. And this shows that African governments have attached a political will on the issues of climate change. And when we contextualize this, he talked about what our government, like government of Uganda, is doing. We're not doing to our expectations. They also have some loopholes. But again, as civil society, for us, our work is to lobby, advocate, research, and disseminate what we find. We know that government developed in 2007 a national adaptation plan. But money to implement such a plan, it was only $40 million. It has taken them years to mobilize such money to implement such a very ambitious plan. Now government is also trying to look into its projects to come out on how to mitigate other impacts. So you can see they are doing something, but also there are hiccups in what they are doing. He talked about the issue of green economy. How do we achieve this? I always say green economy,
green businesses.
You look at it in 3 perspectives. Improving human well-being, promoting social equity, and protecting your environment. That is a short form of defining the concept of green economy, which governments are deciding now. So in this context, what I'm trying to say is governments should look at what they want. If your government does not want to stand on its toes and says, look, I want to achieve a path a government takes as achieved, then who's to blame? Because the Conference of Parties is the highest decision making in this convention. So when governments meet in Durban this year and you don't want to say out loud what you need, then no one is to blame.
Let's talk about Durban. Countries like Uganda still need to develop, but they, this could be a collision causes with the environment. How would you do it? Talk to us about Durban and then that collision cause.
Durban, this time Africa is having the third Conference of Parties in a row, ever since the Conference of Parties started sitting in Berlin in 1995. This time we are meeting in Durban as Africa, and under the auspice of government of South Africa, which has labeled this as the African COP, the People's COP. African Union has mobilized governments at the highest political level, civil society and our umbrella networks like Climate Action Network Uganda is partnering also with regional civil societies like Bakika, like the African Council of Churches, and we are coming up with one voice. And what we need to see in Durban is a second commitment period. That is one of our major objectives. That we want governments to not kill the only legally binding agreement that they endorsed in 1997 in Japan in a seat of Kyoto. Because that is the only legally binding agreement that compels governments to reduce their emissions.
Yes.
And that is the ultimate objective of the convention.
And the US said it won't be party to it.
Yes, for it was clear. But we are mobilizing and we are trying to advocate such that the US also comes in place and it leads by example.
How far have we gone in getting everybody on board?
We are planning an African caravan of hope.
Right.
And this African caravan of hope, because it is going to be an African COP, we are correcting African voices, African pictures, African demonstrations, African initiatives, and we are circulating all of these through African countries. And on this we have a caravan which is starting from Bujumbura, passing through Kigali, coming to Kampala on 12th, we are going to have actually a very big concert in Makerere University
It's on Saturday
next week,
Yes.
where we are going to have a very big sharing of what we have done from household level, community, up to the national level. And from that we will continue traversing the African countries on foot up to Durban. And for us, we are seeing this as a way we are showing our unity as African states, as African people, as African citizens, that this is our unity, and we want to speak with one voice and come up with an ultimate goal in Durban, when governments will sit to pave way on how they want the future of climate change to look like. And also we are looking at governments committing and tabling money. This time we don't want to hear pledges. This time we want to hear money on table.
You've had enough promises.
We have had enough promises from Copenhagen, from Casablanca, from Nairobi. This time we want money on table, because we know the governments who support the environment must put money on table to fix what they did.
Mr. Kabongo, let's talk about this caravan. Do you have much hope in it? It sounds like, just another thing.
Yeah, it is very important that if, as my colleague said, Robert, if you don't want what you want exactly, nobody will say it for you.
If you don't state what you want.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
And what we are saying on our side, we are demonstrating exactly what we want, and we want everybody to know what we are saying. And we are mobilizing everybody to be part of the process in terms of saying what we want. But also, most importantly, is raising the voices of those who can't be there.
For example, cannot go to Durban.
Exactly.
Yes.
For example, you could be having, we have communities which have been affected by climate change in different places in Uganda. For example, in Karamoja, people are really living on the margins of life. And places like Nakasongola, there are people who are affected by climate change.
How are they affected in Nakasongola?
In Nakasongola, you find that place, they are pastoralists.
Yes.
And the majority of them have a very big problem in terms of access to water, because they are also facing some kind of drought. But also, they also have challenges in terms of food security. So, climate change is manifesting itself in Uganda in different eco zones, and therefore we want to raise of those who are suffering,
right,
to say we need to raise their voices and to be heard, so that the caravan is actually trying to do that. But also, it is a sacrifice that we are saying we need by traveling on road.
Yes.
We are saying that if you want to do something, you have to sacrifice for it.
Yes.
There are many options. People would have traveled by air. People would have traveled by other options. But we are saying we need to show our commitment and our solidarity with everybody who is affected by climate change.
Let's hear from the listeners. Tonight on Spectrum, what dangers is Uganda and other African countries likely to face due to climate change? Our government's taking these matters seriously. You can call in now. Our numbers 0414-348-111, 0312-260-390, 0312-261-390. When you call in, please tell us your name and where you are calling from. Alright, okay, let's get some more detail on this caravan of hope. Tell us the genesis and the revelation of it. How do you drive it?
The genesis of the caravan is that we as Climate Action Network Uganda,
yes.
and Pan-African Justice Alliance, we felt that it is very important, as we talk of this being an African COP, that we needed different segments of society perspective in coming up with what we would call the recommendations to the parties or delegates. And the caravan was designed in such a way that everybody has an opportunity to say what they exactly want to see in Durban. And as Robert said, this caravan will be taking off from Bujumbura in Burundi, and it will be moving to Rwanda, it will be passing.
Is this a convoy of vehicles or people riding on camels?
No, it's a convoy of course vehicles, and basically
some people on foot.
Some people on foot to moving. Yeah. Yes.
As on bicycles, I imagine.
Yeah, of course, maybe a few of them. We are saying whatever local means you can use, affordable mean, because we are saying traveling by road is somehow affordable than using air transport.
Right.
So
where does it end? It's supposed to end in Durban.
Yes,
for the conference.
Exactly. So it's moving to Kenya, to Tanzania, up to Malawi, and up to Durban.
So basically, you're saying let's ban less of the environment by using, rudimentary means, traveling by road.
Exactly, but also trying to mobilize and have
awareness.
Exactly. Raise the voices of those who can't go there and get their issues. Even if it's signing, they will send someone somewhere
to sign.
Exactly, a petition that we want.
Speeches.
Exactly. They can say by voice. We shall record them, and we take that to the president. Actually, we are going to hand a petition to the president of the Republic of South Africa,
right?
To say these are the issues.
Jacob Zuma, yes.
Exactly. These are the issues that Ugandans want. These are the issues that Africans want. From those countries where we shall be passing through, and we are saying this time we want to go as with one voice. So we are going with one purpose, one goal, and we really want to see ourselves together, not really so much divided into this one is saying this and that. So the caravan is actually aimed at such a way in terms of giving the voice of the voiceless to say and contribute towards the output which we really want to see in Durban.
So it starts in Bujumbura?
It starts from Bujumbura.
Then ends up in Durban?
Yes, please.
And you're trying to involve everyone. When does it kick off in Bujumbura?
In Bujumbura, I think it will be tomorrow is the ceremony which will be taken in Bujumbura city.
Yes.
And the president of
the president of Burundi will attend the meeting.
Right.
To kickstart the whole project in terms of the activity.
Yes.
And we are hoping that we are inviting everybody in Uganda to find wherever any activity for raising their voices on climate change, please go and attend. We are saying on 12th we have a meeting at Makere University where we have invited quite a number of musicians. Bob Wine will be there, and quite many other musicians. So we are saying we need to raise the voices of those who really can't be in Durban, and we try to package the information when to go Durban, and we hand over the information that we would have collected from different places and sources.
Mr. Bakika, is the Ugandan government keen on the environment?
That's a difficult question, but I think I can give it a try. It's a two-sided coin answer. One, institutions seem to be keen, but I think the individuals seem not to consider.
What do you mean?
What do I mean? That we have the best policies, we have the best institutional framework on environment all over Africa, because it's clear and many countries are copying it. Kenya copied that of Uganda,
right? And
for it is implementing it. So we have a clear institutional framework, but the means of implementation are the ones which have a question mark.
The spirit is willing, but the body is weak. Mr. Kabong.
Yes.
Why is that? Why do we have that disconnect? Well, everything on paper, but getting up to implement them is a problem. Why?
I think it is maybe what we would call our current development paradigm.
Yes.
Which we will need to shift to focusing on maybe say being more proactive and trying to do what we promise. I started really cross-checking our development paradigm and saying, if this is what we want exactly, we must go for it. And this is what we also happening in the negotiations. In the negotiations, if you don't say what you exactly want, actually you should find ways of even mobilizing other states to buy your idea or to buy your issues which you want to see in place. And what we need to do as a country is to find ways of how do we practically implement what we exactly want to see in place and where we want our country to go. So it is an issue of commitment. It's me and you. It involves issues of leadership, and we also need to open up for ideas in terms of participation of in the whole planning process. And people should be owning the process, and they must be there empowered to be able to implement. whatever we talk about. So it's an issue of somehow adjusting our current development paradigm, and we shall be there.
And you think it's possible to develop without destroying the environment?
I've always been saying that we are not saying that we should not, for example, cut a tree, or we should not try to say use the environment, but we are saying using the environment in such a way that is sustainable,
yes,
and in such a way that it is more, you don't create burden on it, you know. So in such a way that the current generation could benefit whatever development kind of achievements we to get, but also the next generation could as well also benefit from the same resource. We can use the example of Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria fisheries are really going down.
The fish stock is being depleted almost.
Exactly. But we have a chance.
We've eaten all the fish.
Exactly.
Yes.
We have a chance of reversing that.
How do we do it?
Definitely, it's an issue of commitment of saying,
reduce the amount of fish on our plate.
Of course, there's overfishing, and we should say, how do we come up with the mechanisms of reducing the challenge of overfishing and the use of the nets which are not really acceptable to international standards? So it's an issue of commitment of both government, but also with the general public. We must say we will need this, and we must go for it.
Mr. Bakika, yeah?
I think to add on what my colleague was trying to allude on, we know that when governments met in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro,
yes,
they discussed the issue of environment and development.
Yes. And
what seemed to come out was environment was the anchor of the economic pillar and the social pillar. Meaning that for a country to achieve its economic development, in one way or the other, it must depend on the environment. If a country wants to achieve its socio-economic development, there is no way you have a disconnect between society depending on the environment. So in simple terms, we are saying that environment is the base of sustainable development.
What are carbon credits?
Carbon credits, these are just units of measurement whereby if you managed to absorb some carbon dioxide over a given specific area, well measured and verified that you have really absorbed. So the unit of measurement of that carbon is what we it is just a jargon people use.
Yeah.
It's what we call a carbon credit.
It's a term of reference. It's a reference. It's a name.
Yeah, it's more of like
measurement.
That. Yeah. So that measurement, which we generalize when we absorb a specific amount of carbon, measured and verified that we have really absorbed it,
yes,
is what we call the carbon unit.
How does a private business or individual get credit from there?
By offsetting.
How do you do it?
How do you offset?
Forests call them to photograph them and they pay.
Like for me, who has a certain plot of land where I'm planting my trees.
Yes.
You can come as a radio station, yes, and say we want to do our corporate social environment responsibility. And how do you do that? Is that we can go into a transaction with me because I'm saving my land to plant some trees which will absorb some of the carbon.
Yes.
So the credits that I would be getting will be in terms of the proceeds which I'm getting from Radio 1.
And the international community?
The international community is still discussing on how it will go into such a business. It is still being done voluntarily.
Planting forests and getting carbon credits, aren't they?
But that's still voluntarily. There is no way you are doing it on a formal basis. So the amount of money I'm paying you is just my personal will. If I decide to pay you today, I'll pay. If I decide no, I won't pay you. So it's my voluntary work.
But also, I think to add on what Robert is saying, there is also a mechanism under the Kyoto Protocol which talks about how under what we call the clean development mechanism, which gives ways and actually, as we say, a mechanism on how to generate carbon credits.
Yes.
So there are different recommended areas with clear methodologies on how to generate carbon and be able to come up with the carbon credits and the market for it.
Right.
And under the clean development mechanism, we have projects which are aiming at, for example, promoting energy efficiency. If you have a project, for example, a hydropower coming up with a hydropower,
which is clean energy.
Yes. You could generate credits and you sell to companies that are polluting the environment,
right.
and they buy your credits, right. and you get money. However, there is something which is very important in that mechanism, what we call the clean development mechanism. There are two main issues. One issue is what we call the sustainability criteria.
Yes.
That when you come up with such a project, for example, the hydropower the development, that project should meet the sustainability criteria. And the sustainability criteria has the following.
We have to go. Okay, our time is up.
Yes. It has one.
Okay.
It must be sustainable in such a way that it will not affect the environment again.
Right.
And it should ensure that communities should benefit more.
All right.
Yeah.
We have to end there. Thank you very much, Mr. Isaac Kabong, Chairman, Climate Action Network-Uganda, also Executive Director of the Ecological Christian Organization. Thank you for coming to Spectrum tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Robert Bakika, Deputy Executive Director of the Bwaise-based Environmental Management for Livelihood. Thank you for coming to Spectrum, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in. We do apologize. You are not able to call in tonight. The lines had a problem, but that should have been rectified by the time we get back here tomorrow. Do stay tuned. I've been your host, Edmond. So up next is the news in English.
I wanna be alive and free.
I wanna be alive and free. I wanna be alive and free.
I wanna be alive and free. I wanna be alive.
The spirit that binds us. Strictly not for sale to persons under 18 years. Please drink responsibly.
It's the MTN Kampala Marathon. Come register and get your kick between the 14th and the 25th November at the MTN Arena, formerly the Lugogo Indo Stadium, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Pay 10,000 shillings for individual registration and 600,000 shillings for corporates. Register for less using your MTN mobile money by sending 9,000 shillings to 0776